Imagine a storm-torn deck in the middle of the Atlantic. Waves crash over the rails as sailors cling to rigging slick with salt and fear. One man mutters it under his breath. Davy Jones is coming for us. Not a captain, not a pirate. Something older, something that waits at the bottom of the sea. For centuries, Davy Jones's Locker has meant one thing to those who made their living on the waves: the ocean floor, the grave of drowned men and broken ships. But who or what was Davy Jones? A demon? A forgotten sailor? A corruption of ancient fears? The answer lies not in sunken treasure, but in the shadowy records of 18th century print, sailor slang, and the brutal realities of life at sea.
The trail begins not with shipwrecks or pirate logs, but with ink on paper. The earliest known printed reference appears in 1726 in The 4 Years' Voyages of Captain George Roberts, a work attributed to Daniel Defoe, author of Robinson Crusoe, but drawing on real seafaring accounts. A threatening sailor warns that disobedience will land the crew into Davy Jones's locker, meaning heaved overboard into the sea itself. A quarter century later, in Tobias Smollett's 1751 novel, The Adventures of Peregrine Pickle, the figure gains flesh, nightmarish flesh. Smollett, a Scottish naval surgeon who knew the sailor's world intimately, describes Davy Jones as the fiend that presides over all the evil spirits of the deep. He appears in various shapes, perching in the rigging before hurricanes and wrecks, with saucer eyes, his 3 rows of teeth, his horns and tail, and the blue smoke that came out of his nostrils. A warning of death and woe.
These are not ancient myths carved in stone or preserved in oral epic. They are literary snapshots of living slang among the men who sailed wooden ships across dangerous oceans. No earlier definitive records survive in logbooks or admiralty papers. The name seems to have bubbled up from the lower decks in the early 1700s, during the height of Atlantic trade, privateering, and the slave trade, eras when death by drowning was commonplace.
Life at sea in the 17th and 18th centuries was a lottery of survival. Ships like the East Indiamen or men of war carried crews of dozens to hundreds. Storms, disease, malnutrition, and combat claimed thousands. A sailor falling overboard in heavy seas had almost no chance of rescue. Bodies vanished. Ships disintegrated on reefs or vanished without trace. Sailors were a superstitious lot. Welsh, Scottish, English, African, and Caribbean men thrown together in cramped quarters. They feared Jonahs, unlucky crew whose presence invited disaster. They invoked saints and gales, and they told stories to explain the inexplicable terror of the deep. Davy Jones emerged as the personification of that terror, a malevolent spirit claiming the drowned for his locker, a sea chest at the ocean's bottom where sunken goods, timbers, and souls were stored forever.
Historians and linguists have sifted the theories carefully. No single origin holds undisputed proof, but several threads connect to the maritime world. One strong candidate links Davy to Saint David, Dewi Sant, patron saint of Wales, whose name Welsh sailors invoked. Jones is a common Welsh surname, but many scholars see it as a corruption of biblical Jonah, the prophet thrown overboard, swallowed by a great fish, and associated with bad luck at sea. A 19th century dictionary explicitly traced it to the ghost of Jonah. Sailors already used Jonah for jinxes. Twist it with Davy, and you have a sea devil. Another theory points to West Indian and African influences. Duppy, or Duffy, a malevolent ghost or spirit in Caribbean folklore with roots in West African languages. Combined with Jonah,
Duppy Jonah could have morphed in multicultural sailor pigeon into Davy Jones. This fits the era's transatlantic mixing of crews.
Folk tales persist, but lack evidence. A 17th century Welsh pirate named Davy Jones operating in the Indian Ocean? Real, but obscure and unlikely to spawn a widespread legend. A myopic duffer Jones who kept falling overboard? Or a London pub owner who drugged sailors, locked them in his ale locker, and sold them to press gangs? These colorful stories circulated in 19th and 20th century books, but crumble under scrutiny. No primary documents tie them directly to the phrase's rise. Linguists favor the St. David-Jonah blend as most plausible, rooted in Welsh seafaring piety, twisted by the grim humor of the lower decks. By the late 1700s, the phrase was common enough for dictionaries of vulgar tongue to define David Jones as the spirit of the sea and his locker as its depths. Davy Jones reveals how ordinary sailors, often illiterate, poorly paid, and facing mortality daily, crafted their own cosmology. Unlike kings or battles recorded in official histories, this legend survived in slang, novels, and whispered warnings. It humanizes the age of sail, men staring into the abyss, giving it a name and a face to make the terror manageable. It also shows folklore's adaptability. What began as a euphemism for drowning evolved into a vivid demon, later romanticized in literature and film. Yet the core truth endured. The sea takes and rarely gives back. Scholars continue to debate, drawing on etymology, naval histories, and folklore studies. No new smoking gun artifact or manuscript has surfaced, no Davy Jones logbook or tomb. Digital archives of 18th century texts confirm the 1726 and 1751 references as the earliest anchors. Linguistic databases trace the phrase's spread into popular culture by the 19th century, appearing in ballads, cartoons, and sailor memoirs. Recent analyses emphasize cultural hybridity. European saints, biblical stories, and African Caribbean spirits merging in the crucible of empire and ocean trade. Ongoing work in maritime archaeology, mapping wreck sites and analyzing sailor artifacts, underscores the constant peril that made such beliefs thrive, but adds no new origin for the name itself. The mystery remains elegantly incomplete, much like the sea it rules. In the end, Davy Jones was never one man. He was the collective dread of countless sailors who knew the ocean's indifference, a locker at the bottom of the world filled with the lost. Today, when we speak the name, whether in pirate tales or casual metaphor, we echo voices from wooden decks long rotted away. The sea still claims its due, and somewhere in its depths, the locker waits. If you enjoy evidence-based stories like this, there are many more waiting to be uncovered.